Several minutes of commercial-free football starts now.
Here are the Purple Mortgage Guys.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Purple Mortgage Guys, coming to you on a Sunday evening after a Vikings victory. Guys, it doesn't really feel like a victory today. Won by 2 touchdowns in Green Bay. All was going well. Defense was rolling. Offense was rolling. Things were looking great. And then the dreaded non-contact injury for our quarterback, and the season takes a huge turn. So I thought we'd jump on tonight, talk about it a little bit, maybe unpack a few things, and then kind of looking forward to what's next. So I'm going to start. I'll start with you, Tanner, on this one. Obviously, by this point, the game is kind of an afterthought, I guess. Played well, but overall thoughts just on Kirk. Could be the last game in purple, and just your overall thoughts on where he was at, where the team was heading, had the game ended a couple series earlier today.
Yeah, this sucks. I know you asked when we hopped on here, Brent, you asked us if this is the worst we've ever felt like after a win. And it's definitely up there. I don't know if it's the absolute worst I've ever felt after a win, but it's definitely up there. Just to see how well we played against a team like San Francisco, who actually after playing Cincinnati didn't look too great today, but we really needed that win to kind of stay or keep our season alive. And then we controlled the entire game today. Like, I felt like the defense played really well again. Granted, Green Bay's offense isn't that great. And Kirk just looked good. He looked good all day. He's looked great all season, arguably maybe his best season through 7 to 8 games of his career. So to see all of that success with Justin Jefferson not even being on the field is really fantastic. I know I messaged you guys in our group chat saying we could probably throw his name in the MVP conversation at this point. And then I think probably 15 to 20 minutes later, he got hurt. So karma somehow. I don't know where we go from here. I kind of have an idea where I think what the team is going to do. I don't know if I want to release those thoughts yet. I kind of want to see what you guys are thinking, but this does feel pretty devastating. The NFC is not very tough right now. So I think the Vikings have a pretty good shot of staying competitive for the rest of the year with a relatively easy schedule, but it just doesn't feel like we're going to be able to compete or threaten anybody in the playoffs if we do decide to make it with Jaron Hall, who's just not very experienced. If we're lucky, maybe he comes in and he turns into somebody like Brock Purdy, but the odds of that happening are very unlikely.
Yeah, for every Brock Purdy, there's a lot of guys out there that struggle drastically, right, or dramatically. So Goose, you're probably like to say maybe it's maybe me, but I think you're maybe the most optimistic out of the three of us. Early in the fourth quarter, were you thinking, man, it's time to go. We're going to go on a roll, go on a run. This could be the year. Was that the level of optimism, or was it still a little tempered yet at that point?
No, I mean, it absolutely was. I feel like beating the 49ers without JJ, the way that Kirk has performed all year, I really felt good about it. The O-line seemed to hit its stride. The defense kind of hit its stride. And I thought we could maybe add a player or two to bolster the roster and make a really good push at it. Not to say that it can't be done still, but it definitely, Kirk was truly playing like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I think especially after Mahomes' performance today, I think had Kirk not injured his Achilles, you would at least have heard conversations about, is Kirk Cousins in the MVP race on national media. So just a really big bummer. I think surprisingly, as big of a Vikings fan as I've been my entire life, I actually kind of feel more bummed for Kirk than I do our playoff hopes. Between the Netflix series and just the more he's kind of opened up, the more you just kind of fall in love with the guy. And when he was getting on the cart, he was still watching the play and was cheering him on, and he knows his season's over. And at that age with that recovery, your future is completely up in the air. And between the playoff loss last year, where it's like go home and be a dad and read books to your kids, and now to have the best season of your career at this stage of your career. And I also saw, I think he asked Reisner if we won the game or not. Like, he just truly good dude, great teammate, seems like a great husband, dad, and I'm really bummed out for him. Just seemed like it was going to be a special season, but it's something that the team could definitely look and potentially like rally behind him, and maybe we can somehow create a spark with that.
Yeah. Say for him personally, it's got to be devastating. For the other players, if you watch any of the post-game stuff, it did not send vibes of a big win by any means. The game itself, they're probably almost as impressive as the San Francisco one, because you were up 3 scores in Green Bay, end up winning by 2 scores. Could make an argument. I mean, it might have even been more than 2 scores had Kirk stayed in there. So, yeah, incredible game. Devastating loss of a player. Probably puts into perspective how important that quarterback really is. You know, a receiver's out for a year, even if it's JJ, you could still win games, as evidenced here the last couple of weeks. Kirk being out, I don't know if it's going to be Jaren Hall, if it's going to be Nick Mullins, or maybe someone else, and we should probably unpack that here as well. But we didn't want to minimize the human element of it, or you're just devastated for the guy and for the locker room. So, what do you think, guys? Now that it's been a few hours here, and you got to look forward, because there's a game coming up again Sunday, and that's the kind of the business of it all. So, Tanner, what would you do if you were in charge? If you were Kwesi, don't take this as what the Vikings are going to do, but what would GM Weber do in this situation? You're 4-4. You're a good chance at making the playoffs, even with respectable quarterback play, but your ceiling is obviously capped, where maybe it felt like that ceiling was quite high here had Kirk stayed healthy. So what does Tanner do if you have got the opportunity, Tanner?
There are a number of different moves that I actually wouldn't be super upset with, but I guess I'll just share what I think they're going to do.
No, that was the question. What would Tanner do?
Let me finish. What I think they're going to do, and it's also what I think I would do.
Okay. I rescind my objection.
So
we can't turn on each other during this turmoil.
I think Jaren Hall is going to be the starter next week in Atlanta. He's the only, outside of Sean Mannion, he's the only other guy on the roster right now. Nick Mullins, I believe, is on injured reserve, I think, for 1 more week. And I actually don't know what the severity of his issue or of his back issue was. We never really heard anything about that because nobody cares. Like, he's a backup QB.
Right, because Kirk hasn't had an injury designation since 2013, so it was a non-issue, right?
Yeah. So he's on IR for 1 more week. I heard it was like lower back spasms or stiffness. I think based off what I read something on Twitter. So it doesn't sound like it's super severe, and I would guess that he'd probably be back against New Orleans. So I think what the team's going to do and what I would do is take Jaren Hall, let him play against Atlanta. You got offensive line's been playing fantastic. Jordan Addison's balling out. He can get through a game, and I think there is a chance that we can still win that game, even though Atlanta has proven to be a pretty decently tough place to play. And their offensive line and QB situation isn't any better than ours right now. So it's up in the air. Go and try and win that game. Come back to New Orleans, or come back to Minnesota to play New Orleans, and get Nick Mullins off IR. If Jaren Hall played well, you start him again against New Orleans. If he didn't, Nick Mullins is off injured reserve. He's been here for 2 years now. He's learned under Kirk. He knows the playbook. He knows the roster. He knows the guys in the locker room. And I think he probably gives you just as good of a shot as anybody else that you might pull off the free agent market or that you might trade for to try and be competitive this year. Like, he's got a pretty good arm. He can stretch the field. He's not as accurate as Kirk is, obviously, but they're relatively the same QB with a little bit less of a dynamic arm when it comes to QB talent. So I say take Jaren Hall, let him run with it in Atlanta, come back, let Nick Mullins be the guy. Don't get rid of any assets.
So if Nick plays or if Jaron plays well, then you roll with him. You're just trying to find the serviceable hot hand, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I think you ride the hot hand, but there's a reason Jaron Hall was QB3 and didn't beat out Nick Mullins in training camp. Like he's a young guy. He's still a rookie. He was a mid-round draft pick for a reason. And that's not to say that he can't do that, because we've obviously seen guys like Brock Purdy that come in and do play well. And that could happen. So if he does play well against Atlanta, you ride it out. But I don't see that happening, I guess.
I rescind my objection. I think that was well thought out. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe it comforts a few people. Goose, what would you do?
I'm a little surprised. I feel like Tanner had hinted a lot at trades and quarterback options out there, and everyone on Twitter and online. I thought Tanner's take is my exact take, and I thought I was going to be
Twitter. It's Twitter, and people love content. So
I know.
Realistically, I mean, all they want to do is see names like, oh, Carson Wentz or Case Keenum or Trey Lance. Like, these are all names that people are talking about right now, but how realistic is it?
Yeah. Even if you didn't have to give up much, like take compensation out of it, I still think, pending his injury and what it is, assuming it's not severe, it doesn't seem like it. I still think Nick Mullins gives this team the best chance to win out of any quarterback that's considered available. But I would do the exact same thing. He can't play next week, and you give Jaron Hall an opportunity to show a flash. I think the hardest thing, where I'm having a little bit of a tough time being like, we can still make a run, is this offense, probably more than in recent memory for me. Like, I might have been learning how to walk the last time we relied this heavily on the passing game. Like, we don't have a running game to help out a quarterback who's figuring it out. And Kirk has been going out there and throwing it 50 times a game, and it's been amazing. And I still think that you can do some of those things. A lot of KOC's offense has been kind of a passing game that fills in the run with all the screens and the quick little plays. And I've just really kind of gained an appreciation for quarterback play watching Kirk, and some of the anticipation throws, or hang into the pocket and make a throw that it's going to be tough to fill his shoes, but it's going to give an opportunity to a guy who seems like, in Jaron Hall, like his post-game interview, doesn't matter what you say, but like just said all of the right things, like thinking about Kirk, had nothing but good things to say for Kirk, that he's going to do whatever the team tells him to. Like, just seems like he's got a really good head on his shoulders. Hopefully he's picked a thing up or two on Kirk's preparation and film watching. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in Jaron Hall's corner that says, you might not ever get this opportunity again with the offense and the offensive line and these weapons. Like, this is your shot. You maybe have one game to go prove it, and he's got to make or break it. So it'll be fun to root for him and hope he shows the world something.
It's the one thing you see with a lot of the young guys, the rookies that get their first start. There's no tape on them, so sometimes there's a little bit of a flash that maybe comes back down to earth. Like Will Levis would be a good example today. We'll see what he does next week now. But you're right. If you're ever going to succeed, it's probably going to be in this offense, the way things are clicking right now. And you think about when Jefferson does come back, man, there's a lot of weapons there to play with. So, guys, what about trade deadline coming up here? And had Kirk stayed healthy, I don't think there was any question about like trading guys like Daniil. Are you selling at all at the deadline? Are you buying? Or are you just kind of letting things play out now at this point?
Anybody that thinks the Vikings are going to be sellers are so unrealistic. It's just not even funny. Like, we're 4-4, riding a 3-game. We went 4-1 in October. Like, we're right in the mix of things. I believe if the season ended today, halfway through the year now, we're the 7th seed. So you don't like what head coach or coaching staff or front office is going to be like, oh yeah, we're sellers. We completely tanked on our season. Our QB's out. Like, it's just not realistic. Nobody's going to do that. So
yeah,
I would be absolutely just shocked if they traded anybody outside maybe like Ezra Cleveland, just because Dalton Reisner's been playing so well. So they're not going to be sellers. I do think that we could be buyers. I don't know if they will trade for a QB. There are a couple guys out there that I skimmed across today that, or came across today, I should say, that I mean, I'd be intrigued in. I'm not going to be against any trades right now, depending on what we give away. But you have a guy like Case Keenum that's been here before. Obviously not the same offense, but I think he and O'Connell would really mix very well together. He's relatively mobile. He's smart. Has played in quite a few different offenses in this league, and he's been around the block. So I think that's an intriguing option. I know Teddy Bridgewater's name came across Twitter today as well. I don't think that's realistic, just because that's a divisional. He's playing for the Lions right now, so that doesn't make much sense. We have to play them twice yet, and I don't think the Lions are just going to be like, "Hey, you can have our backup and access."
The Lions, the only way they might be thinking, the only way they don't win the division is if Minnesota gets on a roll. So yeah, you're right. There's no reason why they would help us out at all, unless they think he's absolute garbage and it's 3D chess or something. But you're right.
I don't see that happening. I'm not really an advocate for it, but I know I did come across Trey Lance's name today as well. He's QB3 in Dallas. No way he's going to see the field this year. So, I mean, if you want to throw like a 6th round pick at Dallas and Jerry accepts that.
What did Dallas give San Francisco again?
I think it was a 6th round pick.
Oh, okay.
So him and Jaron Hall are the same guy. Like, not really much experience. I think Trey Lance has like 4 career starts under his belt. So he does offer some athleticism that a lot of QBs in this league don't. So there is potential there. It's just who can unlock it. So I'm intrigued by that. I wouldn't be against it as long as they don't give away like a high draft pick for him. There was one other name. Oh, another name I came across that I would actually be pretty excited about. I don't think it'll happen. Is Drew Lock, the backup QB for the Seahawks. A lot of potential there as well. Has a cannon for an arm. I don't really think he's been given a fair shake in Denver and Seattle just when he first got there, just because I don't feel like the rosters have been too terrific. But I don't see that one happening just because they don't even have a QB3 on their roster right now, on the 53 or the practice squad. So that one probably isn't going to happen.
Do you see a non-quarterback trade?
Do I see a non-QB trade?
Yeah. Not specifically not. Who, but that's where I kind of went with this. Is before Kirk's injury, I was like, okay, go get 1 or 2 guys. Now I still think maybe go get 1 or 2 guys, but it's less like all in. And like if we give up a 4th or 5th for a depth piece.
Like if you're going to trade another draft pick right now for a guy like Chase Young, like you just lost your starting QB who's the top 10 QB in this league. So like obviously part of you is still going to be on the fringe of like, we're going to give this a shot. We're all in on trying to make the playoffs, but obviously our roster is not as good as they were with Kirk. So you are taking that gamble of giving away draft capital for a player that may or may not help you actually like push the bar across the line to make the playoffs. So I don't think I see that. If they do trade for somebody before Tuesday, I think it will be a QB. I just don't know if it'll happen.
When you talk about the QBs you've named, it feels like there's the top 5, top 10 guys that are way up here. And then you're almost splitting hairs when you're trying to compare Mullins to Jaron Hall, and you're going to have pros and cons of each. But then you've got guys like you mentioned earlier that are the veteran type that there's a reason why they're not highly sought after. They're not sniffing the field right now. Right. So I think what I think back to, the one thing you could be optimistic about is 2017 when Bradford went down. You guys remember how that season started on Monday night when he was just torching the Saints? Had probably his best game as a Viking, if not one of his best games of his career. And it was there was so much optimism. And then I think it was was it a deep bone bruise or something that ended up sidelining him for the rest of the year. And Keenum came in and you hit on an earlier, Goose. We had a running game back then, but we did not have an offensive line.
And a good defense. A really good defense.
And a really good defense. But our defense is coming around too. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me like drinking the purple Kool-Aid, wanting it to happen. Because I hate if we're not playing meaningful football come November, December. But you're going to need a serviceable QB to sniff the playoffs. So
at this point, I think I'd actually be like pretty surprised if we made a trade at quarterback, just because Nick Mullins is a veteran who has some starts under his belt and is like the accurate passer, and Jaron Hall's the young rookie who's got some mobility, good head on his shoulders. Like, I feel like you have everything that's out there in town, who's gotten reps, has been in the locker room. I don't know that many guys add to what you already have.
Is there anyone out there that would be like a fringe top 10, 12, top 12 guy that would be available that's even realistic?
So I was just going to say, I feel like there are two more guys that could be like that, like middle of the pack, like 12 to 15 in the league, like when they're playing their best, which I think that we have the tools here to help them be that.
Who is
but
that?
If you're going to trade for one of these two guys, you're probably going to give up some pretty considerable compensation, like a second round pick, most likely, because like that, nobody's just going to give away like a really solid backup.
Who are these guys with names?
Here. So the first one is Ryan Tannehill. That's a very large contract. I don't know what that looks like on the terms if you decide to make that trade, but I only say that because Will Levis looked like a Pro Bowler today, threw 4 touchdowns in his first career start. So there's no way. I don't think they go back to Tannehill at this point. And then the other one is Andy Dalton with the Panthers. So Bryce Young, a little concerned about like his durability going forward. So I mean, the Panthers aren't going to make the playoffs this year. They're already 1-6, but I mean, I think that's a really another solid backup that has played really well in this league, has the potential to have like that 3 or 4 touchdown game. If you put the right pieces around him, which I think we have here, that I think can move the needle to get you to the promised land. So that's another guy I'd consider.
So are you guys both still holding out hope for a wild card or a division win or a division championship? Or what am I walking into tomorrow morning in the office? What's the level of optimism? Down to like a 5, 4?
I would say like a 4 for me. I think this team still has the potential to win, go like 9-8 and still make the playoffs, like at best. And I think like they could probably compete pretty well in the first round in a wild card game, but I don't see them beating any of those elite defenses on the road, like a Dallas or a Philadelphia in the first round. So I give it a 4.
Well, I went with half points last time, so I'll keep the theme going. I'm going to go 5.5. So I still have hope. I can't rule it out until there's been a quarterback who's had a full week to game plan, go out there and put something on tape. But I think the guys can rally. I think every other aspect of the offense is starting to click, and it'll be interesting. There's going to be a lot of weapons to try to help them out. And if anyone was in a position, I think, to lose their quarterback and make a run, it's the Vikings with Hawk and Addison and JJ and a couple guys in the running back room. I'd like to see Chandler get some more touches after his burst on the called back kick return today. But there's just so many guys. Powell stepped up in a big way. KJ. It's just there's so many guys that a quarterback can go to, and hopefully it's enough to make a little bit of a run.
According to Jonathan Vilma, Madison's having a good season. So
yeah,
that's brutal.
Every time I see the pregame show, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Before we button things up, one thing we haven't even talked about, and I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are. If we were to sign a free agent, not what you think they would do, but like who would you like the most, I guess, of like a Carson Wentz, Nick Foles, Chase Daniel, Matt Ryan. Please don't say Tom Brady. It's not happening. Joe Flacco is a free agent. And the other guy that actually came in for a workout a couple weeks ago was Colt McCoy. So that one would not surprise me at all. That's been around the block.
If he's been in for a workout, I didn't even know that. That's probably the most likely. What would I do? None of those really sound all that exciting. I'd almost say let's just roll. Kirk, can you try to be on the sidelines and communicate during the game? That's probably more valuable than signing a veteran. But.
Yeah,
something to make. Sorry, no, go ahead, Bruce. I'm sorry.
You're on mute there, buddy.
I've got a loose cord all night that I've been trying to. I'm just siding with Brent. I would from the moment this happened and I saw all the rumors, I feel way better about Mullins, more so than Hall probably, but the combination of the two than anyone that's out on the street right now.
I'm not an advocate for it. Like, it's not my first option by any means, but I am like a little bit intrigued by Carson Wentz because he has had an MVP season in this league. Obviously didn't have any success in Washington or Indianapolis, but like he has had success with the right pieces. And there is something kind of cool about him playing back in Vikings country. Like Bismarck, North Dakota is where he's from. And I think he'd be playing close to home and to his family. And I think that there is an aspect of that kind of motivates players a little bit. So I'd be
somebody like him, if they signed him, it would be probably a 2-3 week thing before he's acclimated enough to even see the field, right? So
yeah,
that'll be the other thing. They'll sign someone maybe with even the intention of just depth at that point or kicking the tires. And there'll be this whole overreaction about first time Hall throws a pick or an interception or a bad incompletion or something, and there's going to just be that. That's what we're signed up for the next several weeks. We're going to feel that roller coaster ourselves, and it's going to be insane. So,
if we could get the Nick Foles that beat the Vikings in the conference championship, let's bring him in. It's all not asking for too much.
We just need any Cowboys backup. And what's that?
He did win a Super Bowl in our stadium, so he plays well there.
Yeah. All right, boys. I think we could talk about the game, but I don't know that anybody's really all that interested in it. It was fun while it lasted. We'll see where the week goes, and maybe by the next time we jump on the trade deadline, we'll have sparked some conversation on an area we're not even thinking about. So, if you've not yet subscribed, hit subscribe. If you've got some comments, questions for Tanner, Goose, or myself, leave those, and we'll be back again later. Have a good week, everybody.